Picture this, it's 1951. A gleaming silver spaceship lands right in the middle of Washington, D.C., and out comes a visitor with a chilling message for all of humanity. It wasn't an invasion, not in the way we'd think. It was a warning, and it was delivered in one of the smartest, most influential sci-fi films ever made. So today, we're going to dive into the incredible story behind The Day the Earth Stood Still, a true masterpiece that was born from the fear of a world teetering on the edge of its own destruction. To really get this film, you've got to understand the world it was born into. As the director Robert Wise said, this was right at the dawn of the nuclear age. The whole world had just seen the horrifying power of the atomic bomb. The threat of another war, one that could literally end everything, was hanging over everyone's heads. This fear wasn't just some abstract idea. It was the air people were breathing, and it became the absolute driving force behind this entire movie. So the filmmakers had this really tough problem to solve. How do you actually get a powerful message about peace across to a world that's actively getting ready for war? Well, their answer was to wrap that message inside a story that was first and foremost just a really great, entertaining movie. The whole idea for this thing has a fascinating origin. The producer, Julian Blaustein, was really bothered by this term that was being thrown around, peace offensive. It was a way to make any talk of peace sound suspicious, like a trick. He wanted to make a film that basically said, hey, peace is a good thing, but how do you do that without sounding preachy? He looked at hundreds of stories until he had a light bulb moment. Science fiction. It was the perfect way to talk about huge ideas without hitting people over the head with them. He found the seed of the idea in a short story called Farewell to the Master. But honestly, the movie we all know and love is a whole different beast, thanks to the brilliant screenwriter Edmund North. North took the basic parts, a man, a robot, a spaceship, and he totally flipped them on their head. He transformed this small, clever little story into a massive global epic with a message that was meant for every single person on the planet. Okay, so having a fantastic story is one thing, but making the audience actually believe it? That's a whole other challenge. For this film, making it believable came down to two key things: a groundbreaking commitment to realism and a soundscape that was truly from another world. So here's the crucial decision. Director Robert Wise figured that the best way to sell a totally extraordinary event, like a spaceship landing in DC, was to make everything around it feel completely and utterly ordinary. He wanted to drop this sci-fi concept right into a world the audience would instantly recognize as their own. And he pulled it off with a few key tricks. He shot on the actual streets of Washington, D.C., not some fake studio set. He used this semi-documentary style, and shooting in black and white made it feel like you were watching an urgent news report. By putting his alien visitor in a place as mundane as a boarding house, he made the impossible feel totally real. So you have this gritty realism on one hand, but the sound of the film, it was anything but realistic. Wise brought in the legendary composer Bernard Herrmann to create this unsettling alien vibe, and what he came up with became one of the most innovative and influential movie scores of all time. I mean, just look at this lineup. Herrmann basically took the Hollywood scoring rulebook and threw it out the window. He got rid of the traditional string section entirely, which was like the heart and soul of most scores back then. Instead, he built his orchestra around heavy brass, pianos, and, most famously, two theremins. Those are the electronic instruments that create that iconic, eerie, vibrating hum. It was a sound that nobody had ever heard in a movie theater before. Of course, all the amazing camera work and incredible music wouldn't mean a thing without the right people in front of the camera. And finding the perfect actors, especially for the alien visitor, turned out to be one of the toughest challenges of the whole production. I mean, that's a wild question, isn't it? The credibility of the entire movie really depended on this one role. The visitor had to seem super intelligent, he had to have authority, but he also had to be a complete mystery. The journey to finding the right guy, though, was full of some crazy twists and turns. Okay, so this was a real nail-biter behind the scenes. Their first choice, a guy named Claude Rains, wasn't available. Then, the head of the studio, Daryl Zanuck, just went ahead and cast one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, Spencer Tracy, without even telling the producer. But Julian Blaustein knew that would be a total disaster. Luckily, Zanuck then found Michael Rennie, an English stage actor who nobody in America knew, and he turned out to be absolutely perfect. And here's why that was so important. Like Blaustein argued, if a super famous face like Spencer Tracy steps out of that spaceship, the whole illusion just crumbles. Poof, gone. The audience had to believe they were seeing a genuine visitor from space, not just a movie star playing dress-up.
Casting an unknown was a huge risk, but it was absolutely essential to the film's power.
The casting drama didn't stop there. When they chose Sam Jaffe to play the wise, Einstein-like professor, they hit a political wall. Jaffe was being targeted by the Hollywood blacklist during the Red Scare. But in a really incredible moment of integrity, studio head Darryl Zanuck just refused to fire him. He stood up for his actor and his film against all that political pressure. And then there was Gort, the silent, menacing, unforgettable robot. To bring this giant to life, they found Lock Martin, who was literally the 7'7" doorman at Grumman's Chinese theater. But putting a real guy inside a massive foam rubber suit? Yeah, that created a whole new world of problems. The reality of creating Gort was, well, it was a bit of a mess. Turns out Lock Martin was actually pretty frail and could barely stand being in that hot, heavy suit for more than 10 minutes. The foam knees would buckle and wrinkle when he walked, and if you look really, really closely in one shot, you can actually see the zipper up his back. And get this, in the final scene, he was so exhausted his arms started to twitch, which was a total accident, but it ended up making the robot seem even more alive and menacing. A happy accident for sure. So the film is finally done. It's in the can. Now it's time to show it to the world. But the filmmakers were about to face one last terrifying moment of truth. A moment that would decide if their masterpiece would be taken seriously or just laughed right off the screen. Studio head Darryl Zanuck was so incredibly confident in the movie that he wanted to release it without a single test screening. 0. But the producers, thankfully, insisted. They had to know how a real audience would react to a story this strange. And it's a good thing they did. Can you just imagine the sheer panic? At that first preview, right when the spaceship lands and the military starts scrambling around it, the audience started laughing. The producer, Julian Blaustein, said his heart just sank. He thought, that's it, we're dead. If they laugh at the movie, you've got nothing. But Zanuck had this flash of genius. He realized they weren't laughing at the film, they were laughing at how absurd and primitive humanity's panicked, violent reaction looked. They were laughing with the film's message. And that message has kept people talking for decades. But what's so interesting is that not everyone hears the same thing. The film has been seen as a liberal anti-war statement, a call for a stronger United Nations, and even as a conservative warning against a kind of fascist, one-world government. It's so powerful that it's kind of like a mirror, reflecting whatever hopes and fears the person watching brings to it. But in the end, it all comes down to this line. Klaatu's final speech isn't really a threat. It's just a calm, cold statement of fact from a much higher authority. It is the absolute core of the film's warning: grow up, get past your petty fights, or you will be erased. A message that hits just as hard today as it did back in 1951. And that's what the film leaves us with, this final, haunting question. It gives humanity this stark choice, this cosmic intervention meant to save us from ourselves. And when you look around at the world today, more than 70 years later, you really have to ask yourself, have we listened? What would our answer be?